Okay, then Mr. Fook.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for very interesting discussion. Then I know more about financial resources. So my question to David and Diane, that how private sector can reach the financial resources like it for construction loan. How they know, how do they know the loan and how they apply for the loan. And the second question for Daniel, that beside concessional loans, so how does the government provide any subsidy for such kind of business for plastic recycling business, plants building, and also for the product, something like that. And the question for Jim, wondering that for the I don't know much about global plastic charity, but in global plastic charity, is it does it have a mechanism for development of the plastic circularity credit market for such kind of business? Thank you.
I mean, the simple answer to concession loan is just come to us and we'll have a discussion about each project. But it's also very important to know that we try to support projects that are not that bankable with concession loans, but projects that are deemed to be successful, we don't support in that sense. So the use of concessional loan is to make a project that would not occur. And that's what we look at. So, I mean, yeah, the equity return is one important part of whether we use concession financing or not in that sense, yeah. What's the second question after that?
I'm just wondering because for myself, when I work for VAM President Mission, so many private sector, many private investor, they don't know much about ADB private investment. So even for some conceptual loan, how they know that the loan there and how they can apply for loans for lending.
Yeah. You're based in Vietnam, I'm assuming, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, so we have an office in Hanoi. We have private sector people just like me in Hanoi, and we can definitely set up a meeting to see whether your projects are viable in that sense, yeah. There's no online application for it. It doesn't work like that. You just reach out to us, and then we have a meeting, and we have a site visit and discuss. That's how we do it, yeah.
Daniel, for government subsidy. Does the government provide any subsidy for such kind of the business plastic recycling?
Yeah, Indonesian government, you mean, right? So right now, I think for Indonesian government, there's not yet a specific subsidy, but the government has a lot of grants projects in terms of the plastic projects. So the government of Indonesia here, maybe if you want to comment. So for example, like the RDF project or the MRF projects. So those things, there are several grant funding can be provided by the government that private sector can apply and supported by the government. But very specific, let's say, tax incentives, it's not yet there, Pa.
So just to sort of close out what David was saying about, I mean, ADB has a presence, but unfortunately in certain circles we have this reputation of being slow, being difficult. But we rely heavily on our resident missions. So we have our Vietnam resident mission, we have our Indonesian resident mission. And I think one of the key things about this deal that we did with ALBA is that it broke that mold of ADB's traditional infrastructure approach. It was, thanks to David and Jackie and the PSOD team, it hit many new steps for ADB. It did a lot of things that we'd never done before. And it really set us up well to look more openly at smaller, and by smaller I mean, typically we were 500 million, 4.5 billion for a railway or an airport, to come down into that 100 million, 50 million, 40 million range, but also the flexibility to look at informal sector And you know, let's be honest, a lot of these sustainability projects are in that lower value area. So I think we are innovating. We've gone through a new operating model. We're working in a different way now to allow private sector to talk to us. And you know, just today, I got the email from our private sector team for 3 deals in Vietnam. So you know, it is an area that we're growing in. It is an area that we're getting better at. You know, and I mean, David and his team and Diana are a testament to that. In terms of the Global Plastics Treaty, and I think Rocky and I, when we talked about this 2 years ago, we had really high hopes for, you know, financing mechanisms and market development and all sorts of aspects. The reality of it is I think that I mean, Rocky can perhaps add some more color later on, but is that the treaty we get will be the treaty we get. But we've seen groups like Vera taking forward methodologies to allow the development of plastics credits. We've seen Citibank and World Bank drive forward a bond for plastic credits. We're seeing companies like Rebound out of Abu Dhabi who have a trading platform for secondary plastics, for recycled plastics. We see Minderoo Foundation are developing a trading platform for secondary plastics, for recycled plastics. So although the Global Plastics Treaty will be a very solid stake in the ground, in a lot of instances, private companies, private industry are developing those formats, those frameworks, those marketplaces that we hoped the treaty would bring. But because of the overall inertia, the overall positivity, we are seeing those develop. So you know, it's a positive environment, but it's not all about the plastics treaty. There's a lot of places where, you know, banks, multilateral development banks, investors, scientific teams are developing that organically without the plastics treaty in place.
Okay, thank you. But Jim, because like climate change, right? Paris
Last
Agreement, they
question,
have
Mr.
you know,
Phuc.
like a carbon credit market. So I don't know that if they have quite similar in global plastics treaty.
So the Global Plastics Treaty will set out the basics of baselines, compliance. Each country will have to come up with its national action plan on how it's going to improve its behavior. But the actual markets for secondary materials, those trading systems are not included within the Global Plastics Treaty. They are something that is being developed external to that. So, I mean, you know, Diane, Kamal, you have more knowledge of this, but we have like a Rebound out of Abu Dhabi, which has set itself up as one of the larger secondary plastics trading and clearing houses. A lot of the work that we did with Diane, with David, was looking at that trade of crystallized plastics, that trade of recycled plastics. And the reality of it is that that is an international trade. It does have to travel quite a long distance because of the differing demands, the different local situations, the different local appetites. But that global trade of secondary plastics is developing. It is there. It's not restricted by things like BRS because there becomes a point where it finishes being a waste and becomes a product again. So you can trade internationally after that point. The problem is that in the past people have been a little bit too enthusiastic in their definition of clean plastics and fallen foul of the BRS Secretariat and smuggling laws.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. And on that very positive and hopeful note, I want to thank our panelists, David, Dion, and James, for all of their interesting insights and inputs. Please join me in giving them a warm round of applause. Thank you. That ends our session.